Hello everyone. Welcome to today's program. I am Tang Jingyuan. As the year of the horse, Bingwu, in 2026 begins, Beijing's sky astonishingly displayed a blue sun, while a dust storm of apocalyptic proportions blotted out the heavens. In the dead of night, gunshots rang out from Zongnanhai, rattling the windows. Is this heavenly retribution or the prelude to a coup? Even more bizarre, in a front-page study report published by the PLA Daily, the three characters Shi Zhuxi, Chairman Xi, have completely vanished, leaving behind only cold, formulaic official language. This is not an editorial oversight. It is the visible tip of an iceberg of silent protest within the military. After Xi Jinping's iron-fisted purge of CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia and CMC member Liu Zhenli, what should have been universal, fervent loyalty across the armed forces has instead been met with collective silence and contempt. Military region commanders refuse to make statements, while 10 taboo topics are circulating furiously in private among officialdom, from overseas family assets to illegitimate heirs being groomed for succession, all pointing directly at the husband and wife shop and hereditary ambitions. As the foundation of the power structure cracks, economic collapse, population freefall, and diplomatic isolation erupt simultaneously. Will 2026 become the turning point? Why has Xi Jinping's strong army dream degenerated into an isolated endgame? If you're also following this topic, please click subscribe and turn on the bell to select all notifications so you don't miss future episodes. Since the beginning of 2026, the skies over Beijing have appeared unusually ominous. While people were still debating whether the apocalyptic dust storm on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year and the rare blue sun constituted some kind of dynastic doomsday omen, an invisible power struggle without smoke or fire has already quietly broken out between the lines of the PLA Daily. Have you noticed one extremely abnormal detail? On February 23rd, the front page of the PLA Daily carried a report on a certain unit of the Information Support Force studying Xi Jinping's thought on strengthening the military. Articles of this type are conventionally filled with expressions of loyalty and support. Yet throughout this entire report, aside from the mandatory 8 characters, Xi Jinping thought on strengthening the military. The 3 words Shi Zhuxi are nowhere to be found, nor is there any of the usual effusive declarations of allegiance. This phenomenon is by no means accidental. Looking back to the end of 2025, similar articles appeared in the PLA Daily that also avoided mentioning Shi Zhuxi, though at least they still use stock phrases like promoting Xi thought to enter mind and heart to make a perfunctory show. But after January 24th, 2026, when the Ministry of National Defense officially announced that CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia and CMC member Liu Zhenli had been placed under investigation, the military's chilly posture became especially noteworthy. Let's compare. Just a few days after the announcement of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli's investigation, on January 28th, when the PLA Daily reported on study activities in a certain armed police unit, the opening line read "Chairman," she pointed out, and the phrase "Chairman" she appeared twice in the text. That is the standard posture for demonstrating loyalty to Xi Jinping. Yet in army-related reports published around the same period, the 3 characters Shi Zhuxi once again disappeared. What does this inconsistency and chaos indicate? It shows that although Xi Jinping used an iron fist in January to arrest major military figures and attempted to regain control, the hoped-for scene of fervent, nationwide military allegiance simply never materialized. In fact, signs of deliberately downplaying Xi Jinping's personal authority began emerging in the last few months of 2025. At that time, front-page headlines in both the PLA Daily and military websites no longer revolved obsessively around Xi Jinping. Even the cover of PLA Pictorial dared to omit his portrait. Although after the arrests of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, Xi Jinping appeared to have forcibly reclaimed media dominance and even personally issued commendation orders praising the cyberspace force for its successful network operations in handling the Zhonglu case, the underlying sense of alienation cannot be concealed. According to sources within the system, The water behind this purge runs extremely deep. US-based commentator Wang Youqian has analyzed that Xi Jinping's pattern of deception, evil, and struggle in carrying out these arrests has in reality driven the military into a dead end. The current situation is that Xi Jinping has almost no prestige left within the troops. Military region commanders have maintained near-universal silence regarding the arrests of Zhang Youxia. No one is willing to be the first to step forward and express support. This collective silence is, in essence, a form of wordless contempt and resistance. As one provincial ministerial-level official privately lamented after the arrests of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, the first reaction among officials was shock and disbelief, followed by a complete loss of direction about the future that could only muddle along day by day. This collective shift from fear to contempt is the most dangerous signal any regime can receive. Although this article is merely a subtle change in a PLA daily headline, what it reveals is the stark reality that Xi Jinping still has not truly subdued the military and that his authority is teetering on the brink. If the headline change in the PLA daily is merely a ripple on the surface, then the downfall of Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli constitutes a violent earthquake beneath the waves. On January 24, 2026, official Chinese media announced that CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia and CMC member Liu Zhenli had been placed under investigation for serious violations of discipline and law. From both external and internal high-level perspectives within the CCP, this represents a thorough political liquidation. US-based commentator Wang Youqian pointed out that the purge follows a classic deception-evil struggle playbook. First, individuals are seized through black box operations. Then, before evidence is even solidified, the PLA Daily hurriedly publishes an editorial fabricating 5 grave charges to carry out public sentencing. This practice of convicting first and searching for evidence later reflects Xi Jinping's profound inner insecurity. But why Zhang Youxia? This man, once regarded as Xi Jinping's #1 confidant, a childhood friend and leading figure among the Red second generation. Which red line did he cross? According to inside information disclosed by Australia-based legal scholar Professor Yuan Hongbing, the core of the conflict actually points toward First Lady Peng Liyuan. Yuan Hongbing stated that Peng Liyuan's real role in the military far exceeds public imagination. She holds the special title of full-time member of the CMC Cadre Selection Committee. This means that the promotion of any division level or higher officer in the PLA effectively requires her input. An even more explosive detail, it is said that during an expanded meeting of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia directly and bluntly told Xi Jinping to his face that the promotion of senior military cadres must not be turned into a husband and wife shop. This single sentence not only tore away the fig leaf covering Xi Jinping's placement of cronies in the military, but directly challenged his absolute privatization of military power. In Xi Jinping's eyes, when the loyalty of old subordinates could no longer be relied upon, Peng Liyuan became the only person he could trust. Yet this, when one person attains the way, even chickens and dogs ascend to heaven, model has provoked intense resentment among professional military officers. Beyond suspicions of Shandong Gang expansion, rumors have spread wildly within official circles that Xi Jinping intends to imitate ancient monarchs by paving the way for an illegitimate son to succeed him, and that Zhang Youxia was seen as the single greatest obstacle on this path of hereditary succession. Although these rumors are difficult to verify under tight information controls, in 2026 Beijing officialdom, they are circulating vividly and in great detail, marking a collective fear and centrifugal force within the party directed at Xi Jinping's dynastic ambitions. At present, accounts of Zhang Youxia's situation vary widely. Some reports claim he is imprisoned in Beijing under dual surveillance by the Beijing Garrison and the Central Guard Bureau. Darker versions even suggest he has already been black box executed or is being kept alive on life support. This Stalin-style logic of purging may have temporarily eliminated rivals, but it has plunged Xi Jinping into genuine isolation. Red Princeling Liu Yuan privately predicted that even if Xi Jinping rebuilds his Xi family army command structure in 2026, the rapidly accumulating resentment within the military will, in a very short time, once again trigger major cases of absolute disloyalty. As Liu Yuan put it, under such extreme anxiety and rage, the dictator may ultimately descend into madness. When the only bonds holding power together are fear and suspicion, how much longer can this husband and wife shop, limping regime survive? Next, we turn our gaze beyond the purple walls of the Forbidden City to the deep red compounds and hutongs. In this year of the horse, Bingwu, 2026, the atmosphere in Beijing is not merely oppressive. It carries an absurd and of days quality. At the start of 2026, officialdom in Beijing is experiencing a bizarre collective psychological collapse. On the fifth day of the Lunar New Year, an all-encompassing dust storm swept the capital, and the sky displayed the rare phenomenon of a blue sun. This scene, jokingly called by ordinary people, "Even the heavens have turned yellow," has been privately interpreted in Beijing's superstitious and scientific intertwining official circles as heavenly punishment and a signal that the dynasty's mandate is exhausted. Thus, despite Zheng Nanhai's repeated orders forbidding reckless discussion, the whispers have not been extinguished. Instead, they have spread like wildfire throughout the system, with the spearhead pointed squarely at Xi Jinping. According to a compilation by the X account New Highland, the 10 most widely circulated topics among Beijing officials right now all point directly at Xi Jinping. In addition to celestial omens signaling dynastic termination, others include gunshots reportedly heard deep in the night of February 21st in Zhongnanhai. Although the authorities have desperately tried to suppress the news, it is widely rumored inside the system that Li Qiaoming launched a palace coup, that pro-Russia factions counterattacked, and even that remnants of Zhang Youxia's old network engaged in direct confrontation with the Xi family army. This anxiety that, once the guns sound, the knife handle can no longer be held firmly, has placed the Central Guard Bureau on first-level combat readiness. Family scandals have fully erupted. From reports that Xi Jinping's sister Qi Qiaoqiao has been placed under house arrest in Shenzhen, to U.S. intelligence disclosures that the Xi family holds more than $1 billion in overseas assets, officials are privately mocking. After 10 years of shouting anti-corruption, it turns out his own family has monopolized overseas oil interests and amassed enormous wealth. This double standard has caused grassroots officials to shift from fear to complete contempt. Foreign policy flip-flops have also become a laughingstock in official circles. Beijing's sudden provision of humanitarian aid to Ukraine at the end of the Russia-Ukraine war has been derided as backstabbing Putin and picking peaches by selling out Russia to survive. Moreover, with Trump expected to visit China at the end of March 2026, conveniently straddling April Fool's Day, officials are privately joking that it is Trick You Again 2.0, reflecting the complete passivity and policy paralysis of the top leadership in international games. Even more devastating is the collapse of technological blockade, with the U.S. State Department launching the Freedom.gov platform, allowing domestic users to bypass censorship with one click. Officialdom is both quietly cheering the firewall is dead and deeply aware that information control has become a paper tiger. When power loses its absolute monopoly over information, all that remains is bluster masking inner weakness. This collective shift from fear to contempt marks the regime's entry into the most dangerous, brittle fracture period. What every dictator fears most is not external enemies, but internal collective awakening and centrifugal forces. In this deathly silence and undercurrent surging Beijing, millions of officials have moved from kowtowing to cold-eyed spectating. Once the flames of backlash are ignited, there is no turning back. 2026 collapse tipping point. Who will clean up the mess? If the power struggle in Zhongnanhai is the script of this grand drama, then the economic data of 2026 is the bulldozer tearing down the stage. We are standing at an extremely dangerous tipping point. Multiple analyses predict that 2026 will be the year when 7 major crises detonate simultaneously: deflationary spiral, real estate collapse, financial risks, population cliff, industrial contraction, weak external demand, and fiscal bankruptcy. This is not alarmism. In 2025, China's birth population hit another record low of only 7.92 million, a drop of 3.39 million from the previous year, setting the lowest figure since 1949, while deaths reached 11.31 million. This population cliff brings not only a future labor shortage, but an immediate and total loss of confidence. At the same time, rumors of runaway provincial debt grow louder by the day. Land finance has completely collapsed. Although the authorities continue mechanically promoting high-quality development and technological self-reliance, in reality, private sector confidence has plunged to freezing point, and foreign capital is exiting at the fastest pace since the Cultural Revolution. As Human Rights Watch pointed out in its 2026 World Report, after more than a decade of Xi Jinping's rule, China no longer has any independent civil society. Even the smallest policy criticism invites a heavy fist. In this environment where bankruptcy, unemployment, and despair have become the norm, Xi Jinping still intends in 2026 to rebuild the various command structures of the party guard army that he himself destroyed. Yet recently, Red Princeling Liu Yuan bluntly stated, even if they are rebuilt, major cases of absolute disloyalty toward him will erupt again in a very short time. Because dissatisfaction and resentment within the military toward Xi Jinping have not dissipated, they have rapidly accumulated. Liu Yuan's prediction: Xi Jinping is very likely, under acute anxiety and rage, to eventually become a madman. Meanwhile, the Taiwan Affairs Office has been ordered to issue military writs and must fully intervene to control the November 2026 9-in-1 local elections in Taiwan, using United Front and cyber forces to greatly enhance the prestige of patriotic unification figures. This is because 2026 is when the party guard army is at its weakest and least capable of fighting. Xi Jinping can only rely on infiltrating Taiwan to stabilize the Taiwan Strait and create conditions for possible war in 2027 or 2028. But the problem is this: when power is reduced to nothing but violence and fear and can no longer provide even basic survival guarantees, the system enters the brittle fracture period. The most thought-provoking sentence circulating in early 2026 Beijing is, after we replace him, what will be left behind? It reflects an extreme collective anxiety. On one hand, people desperately want him gone immediately. On the other, they dread that what he leaves will be fiscal bankruptcy, social disintegration, and possibly prolonged turmoil. To summarize this ongoing twilight of power, we can see a clear logic. Through extreme purges, Xi Jinping has attempted to reclaim authority. Yet in doing so, he has unintentionally severed the regime's last connection to reality. When the military remains silent, officialdom collectively despises him, and the economy grinds to a complete halt, this regime has in fact already entered a state of brain death. 2026 may not bring a dramatic, ribbon-cutting style finale, but it is destined to be a watershed in China's fate. When a leader turns himself into the nation's greatest negative asset, when the three characters Xi Zhu gradually fade from the PLA daily, with a great firewall trembles under the assault of freedom.gov, we are witnessing the final struggle of an old era before collapse. The wheel of history never turns according to the will of dictators. When the tipping point arrives, no black box operation can stop the eruption of truth. Welcome to share your views in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us for more in-depth analysis. See you in the next episode.